boardroom. This is the business of esports. As the prophet of esports, I rely on trustworthy and meaningful data every day. Data from our research partner YouGov offers the most complete view of esports fans and gamers in the world, providing context to who they are, what they think, the brands they buy, and things they do. YouGov's connected insights and research services inform strategy at every level. If you're a team, a brand, agency, or rights holder, you should be talking with YouGov. Their partners measure and maximize ROI and are telling compelling stories with data. Visit yougov.com/gaming-esports to learn more. From the keyboard to the boardroom, this is the Business of Esports weekly news show / post podcast live stream. I am Paul Dewalibi. I'm joined today by my friends and co-hosts, Jeff the Juice Cohen, Lindsay the Boss Poss, and Jimmy has a nickname this week. The Honorable Judge Jimmy Barada. For those of you who are new here, welcome. What we do here is we cover the most pressing gaming and esports topics and news of the week, but we look at all of it through a business and C-suite lens. We dissect, we analyze the business implications of everything happening, and best of all, we get to do it live with you guys. So we encourage you to challenge us, get in our faces, ask questions. It makes it that much more fun. We know so many of you lurk, but we really encourage you to get involved, and we appreciate everyone getting involved. So welcome, everyone. How is everyone doing this week? Lindsay?
Doing so great. Two really cool things that happened this week. The first is...
Plug it. Let's hear it.
Hold on. The first is not as exciting as the second, but the first is I went to a really awesome, I went to the Immersive Van Gogh exhibit today, which was so cool. Really, really cool intersection of art and VR. It was so much fun. And we did like the whole thing with the headset as well. Totally worth it. If it's in your city, you guys should definitely check it out. I really enjoyed it.
What's it called?
And then the Immersive Van Gogh exhibit.
Immersive Van Gogh. Yeah, there is one in New York, I think.
I've walked past it 100 times. Never walked in.
Yeah.
Yeah, we actually, when we were in Vegas, we stayed at the hotel with it. Yeah. Really cool though. It totally definitely blew my expectations out of the water. I don't know what my expectations were, but it definitely was better than whatever they were. So cool. That's always good. And then second, the more exciting news is that my podcast officially launched this week. So I'm so happy. I've been having a lot of fun like on the social channels too. And you know, if you guys just can't get enough of me, like now there's more of me. So really, really excited and happy about that.
Lindsay, it's impossible to get enough of you. So let's be clear. And everyone should definitely go check out Lindsay's podcast, Meta Woman. You can find it everywhere. It's on Apple Podcasts now, Spotify, Google Play, Stitcher, basically every single podcast platform. And so really, really encourage everyone. And Jeff and I are doing a podcast together called Meta Business. It's the business sort of commentary on metaverse news. And so we're 2 weeks into that now. So if you haven't subscribed to that already, definitely go check that out. Meta Business, again, on every single podcast platform. It's been a lot of fun. So
it's
congrats
awesome.
to Jeff and Lindsay.
It's tough, being one-on-one with the master of the metaverse. I will say it's not as easy, without my other friends here. Really to go toe to toe from an intellectual standpoint with the one and only master of the metaverse.
The one and only. This is trademark copyright. No one can take this. Greg says, love the new podcast. Great job. Thank you, Greg. Judith says VOA, FYI. I don't know what VOA means. Robert says the survey says yes on use of the Tron backdrop.
Nice, Robert.
Welcome. It's just because I'm not at home and I'm not in the studio right now, and I haven't got my winter setup here yet. I'm in Florida, and so unfortunately, you guys are going to have to put up with the virtual background for now. But I promise we'll get it sorted over the next few weeks. Matt says Paul has made it to the metaverse. Matt, that's where I've always been, in my head at least. Mark, any advice on finding investors willing to invest in a Midwest esports startup, a gaming lounge specifically? It's a good question. It's a really good question. Question to start the show. What do you guys think? Jimmy, you're good with this kind of stuff.
Definitely consulting your own network first, right? Tapping into people you know and seeing who they know, who they can introduce you to. But I think before you even start looking outside of yourself, make sure that what you have or that you have something put together, right, to show them, on paperwork. I don't know if this lounge is up and running already, or if this is something, Mark, that you're looking to start, but would love, anyone's going to ask the same, anyone that you take this to is going to ask the same, fundamental questions. So I think being prepared to answer those questions before you're asked is going to definitely serve you well. So I would probably say don't rush it, have materials ready, and also know that anyone you meet, even if they say no, that's still someone part of your network. That's someone that knows someone else. That's someone that you might run into 4, 3, 2 years down the line. So I would treat every introduction and every person just, as a person, and not necessarily as like someone that you're hanging all your hopes on to get that deal done.
That's great advice, Jimmy. One thing I'll just plug, I would say check out the GG Circuit blog. GG Circuit's a company that the company I work for, Esports Entertainment Group, owns. They do LAN center software. So they have a lot of resources around starting a LAN center. The founder, Zach Johnson, started a LAN center, I think, 18 years ago. So they do, this is basically what they do, is they help folks like yourself. They have a whole consulting services business, kind of taking someone from, hey, I have this idea, I want to start a LAN center. How do you actually do it? So I would really look into that as a resource. Obviously, you can reach out to me. You find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to make introductions because they really are the best in the business at kind of the B2B LAN center services, and have a ton of resources to help people like yourself with a business plan, an idea, and a passion for this. So please do.
That's you guys. I mean, both of you couldn't have given a better answer, I don't think. I'll just add one small thing. Oftentimes for businesses like this, if there's nothing there, like if you haven't built the gaming lounge yet, or you haven't, it's just a business plan on paper, and you should have a plan on paper. Definitely, like, friends and family are obviously the easiest to have that discussion with first, and will be the most receptive to helping, investing, whatever, especially in those very, very early days. So I wouldn't discount friends and family that may be potential investors. Mark, I hope that was helpful, but really great question. And guys, we always appreciate getting questions, right? So like, you can interrupt, you can ask questions, doesn't have to be on the topics we discuss. We always appreciate getting them.
I have some questions too, actually, before we get too deep into the show today. And I know, Paul, you want to segue into also kind of teasing a little bit about our guest that we had on today. I want to add, at the end of our podcast, we're adding a new segment where I'm asking the guests some personal questions about themselves. So Chad, if you have any questions that you want to hear, that you want to know what's their favorite book, or games they're playing, things of that nature, please drop it in the chat, DM us, write to us, because we'd love to ask that of our guests coming up and kind of learn more about them as people, not just about the businesses that they're creating.
It's a great point. We have, just to tease it, we have Matt Jackson on the podcast this week, who's the CEO and founder of Ultimate Gaming Championship, UGC. Very interesting conversation with him. But I think most fun was also just the launch of the new segment we're going to start doing every week on the podcast, which is Judge Jimmy's cross-examination. And so it's Jimmy asking 5 non-esports or gaming related questions, right? So you get sort of insight into the people, not just sort of what they've done in gaming. And like Jimmy said, if you guys have like suggestions for fun questions we could ask, always open to it. But it's definitely something we're going to have fun with. Chris says, Kung Fury meets Miami Vice. I dig it. Chris, actually, Jeff and I discussed this on Meta Business. Why is the metaverse neon pink and blue, right? Like, at some point, everyone just agreed the metaverse was neon pink and neon blue. And so
I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, me too. I agree,
like
Lindsay. But it's just the thing now. Matt says it's not a Tron backdrop, it's the metaverse. Exactly, Matt. Exactly. Six Cannon says Meta Business with your host Paul and Jeff featuring Bradley the English Bulldog. More like Bradley featuring Bradley the English Bulldog and your co-hosts Paul and Jeff. If you ask Jeff. Matt says, "Dang, Mark coming in with the hard-hitting questions. I love it. I agree."
We do too.
Jeremy says, "Hi everyone. First time on the live stream, but have been listening on Spotify nonstop for the past month or so. Been loving the podcast." Jeremy, I love you for saying that.
Jeremy, thank you.
and as someone who's been listening for a while and listening to a bunch, would love your thoughts on the new shows, because we always want to make these better. We want to make them more relevant as possible for you guys. So any feedback is appreciated, especially for people who consume a lot of our content. Matt says, GG Circuit just launched Omega, which is a B2B provider of esports and gaming experiences for theaters, malls, etc. Matt, that was the plug they didn't pay for, but sure. These new segments and names and nicknames fire. There you go. That's what I like to see. Chris says red and blue became passé. Well, Chris, what are the metaverse colors now?
Wrong.
Mark says, yes, very helpful. Thank you. I do have a business plan, pitch deck, etc. through LinkedIn. I think you're all part of my network now, so I'll be sending it your way per expert advice to start with my network people. There you go, Mark. I like to hear that. All right, guys. So exciting. Robert says, wait, you say Tron is not metaverse? Tron is definitely metaverse. I would call it OG metaverse. All right, guys. So much to talk about today. We got a lot of big stories, a lot to cover, a lot of ground to cover. Can we start with, I think is probably the biggest story, but I will argue the least interesting in my mind, but it's the biggest story. So we have to start with it. Okay. And the headline here, let me get my screen up here. The headline here is esports company. Can you guys not see it? Oh, sorry. There you go. Esports company 100 Thieves raises $60 million Series C funding round at $460 million valuation. Not much to say other than that. I mean, Nate Shot smiling for good reason here. Jeff, what do you think of this? Talk to me about 100 Thieves, $60 million fundraise, $460 million valuation. Are we in like crazy land territory? Is this totally reasonable? Is this?
I actually think this is reasonable. I mean, to be fair, we don't have really that much. I don't know if there's ever been any disclosed revenue numbers, so
no,
it's somewhat impossible to really say whether this is reasonable. But I'm just going to base this versus FaZe. Like, to me, I think 100 Thieves is probably the preeminent organization, in terms of culturally and reach and stuff like that. So for them to be raising at 50% of the valuation of what the public market is currently valuing FaZe at, like, to me, that doesn't seem that crazy. And it kind of jives with what Forbes has been saying all along in terms of team valuation. So it gives some validation to those numbers that we've been seeing. I don't know. To me, 400 million isn't crazy. Tell me, am I wrong?
Are you bothered that, according to their own words here, that some of the proceeds, how much I don't know, are going to go towards them making acquisitions? Like, do we want to see 100 Thieves starting to buy technology companies and things like that, right? Because they bought High Ground, if you guys remember. That was the first. And they're saying some of this 60 million is going to go towards that.
I don't know if anyone else wants to answer, but I'll take a first shot if you want. We've talked a lot about esports teams buying other esports teams and the sort of benefits of scale and kind of that strategy. So I initially, when I heard M&A, thought of that. In terms of them buying technology, it definitely has a higher degree of risk in terms of when you're buying an esports team. I think it's pretty obvious where the synergies are, and I think you plug them into that model and the acquisition will probably work. From them buying technology companies, that's a lot harder execution. Having said that, you could see some benefits to that if they kind of beefed up their ad tech stack or built some sort of proprietary technology or bought it. So I don't think it's that crazy for them to say, hey, they're going to be doing M&A. I'd love to hear what everyone else thinks.
Jimmy, you're involved with XSET, full disclosure, right? As an investor, as an owner there. You must love this news, right? Because we're seeing these teams pegged at massive valuations.
You know, and also full disclosure, I was courted through a client of mine by FaZe Clan for well over a year leading into their Series A. So definitely have had multiple high-level discussions with multiple tier one orgs on this exact kind of thing, what they're worth, what they're doing, what they're going to do with the money, what the leaders there have done previously before coming to that company, and all of these other things that, you know, you want to learn about before you make that kind of investment. One, it's kind of scary. Like they just raised a lot of money. Clearly, they're blowing through it at a faster than anticipated pace and need a lot of it. So from that perspective, I'm like, gosh, you know, what did they do with the last 30 million? And I do like that some of it is bookmarked for acquisitions. To Jeff's point, you know, like there needs to be synergies, or it's not like they're gonna go spend that stupidly. You know, when you raise that kind of money, it also comes with strings attached, with partners, with VCs or these firms that have those connections, that have other startups that they've funded that they want you to work with, or that are going to be that due diligence kind of check in and say, hey, this is the direction, or this direction that you guys are looking at is something we agree with, or rather, you know, kind of bridging that gap for those that are disconnected. Yeah, as an investor in XZ, I love it, right? Because this is just a huge valuation for all of us, you know, kind of justifying what we're all doing. But the scary part is that now they're going to need a massive exit, right? And this is something, Paul, you and I had spoken to privately, was when you raise that much money, when you're valued, you know, for over $400 million, there aren't a lot of options. Your options become fewer and fewer, right? And we had talked about going public, you know, as probably one of their next steps or next announcements, you know, over the next year and a half here. And that's kind of scary, just because I don't know, I like flexibility. But you know, that's, a lot of people would say that's the dream, so I could be wrong there. So I have mixed feelings about this, but I would summarize by saying I love it as an org owner because it justifies what we're doing and what we believe in. But as a business person, I'm kind of looking at it like this is definitely scary.
Yeah, I mean, Lindsay, I don't know if you have different thoughts before I give my 2 cents on this, but
Jeremy's got a good take too. Not to cut Lindsay, maybe after.
Lindsay, go ahead.
Yeah, so I just finished reading the WeWork book about the rise and fall. So I have to say that these larger valuations and larger funding rounds I've taken like a whole new look of skepticism towards them. That being said, that doesn't mean that this is bound to not work out. But when I think about the longevity of these companies, I don't know that anyone has come forth with a strategy that I just think, yes, in 15 years, this is it. In 20 years, this is it for sure. Now, you obviously need injections of funding like this to make those mergers and do that kind of thing and create that strategy. I don't know if 100 Thieves is the team to do it, so I guess we'll see, which is such a throwaway answer, but that's where I'm at. Whole new dose of skepticism thanks to that book.
I mean, I get why reading that book would make you skeptical. It doesn't mean that just you know.
No, of course not.
Just FYI, we're very happy at Holodeck Media with very large valuations. Just, you know, throwing that out there. But you know, it's one of these things where, given what's happened in the space and the amount of money that's raised, and Jeff brought up FaZe, right? Like in that context, $460 million doesn't seem that crazy, right? It doesn't seem outside the realm of what we should expect. And look, you know, the sort of jaded, sort of old man in me wants to be like, well, you're gonna have to sell a lot of hoodies, right? Like this is gonna have to push a lot of product to justify this valuation. Where I worry for them more than, for example, content companies or like pure media companies or technology companies or things that 100 Thieves is not really, right? 100 Thieves is an apparel brand. They're a brand, period. You could argue they're a content business a little bit. Where I get a bit concerned is, to Jimmy's point, where's the exit, right? And at this point, it's basically they have to go public. And then you potentially end up with what I mentioned when FaZe went public, which is, I doubt any of these are really clean organizations, right? No offense to the people who built them or are managing them, but a lot of them are like college dropouts or this or that, and, you know, not a ton of management experience. And I'm sure these were not built, you know, with tremendous care. I worry that bad things will come out under the scrutiny of a public listing, and that's bad for everybody, right? That's my concern.
It is plausible we could see. Or sorry, you go ahead, Jim. You know more about this than I do.
No worries. I think we all know different things from different perspectives. I just wanted to say, I would expect with 60 million that maybe some of that is going to go to attract some high level executives to help run the company. Though we haven't necessarily seen that with other orgs. But I would say, when I was working with FaZe and going through that process, one of the difficult things was how much equity all the players, the founders owned and had. Because anytime we wanted to do anything, we had to wait for this like team-wide meeting of 5, 6, 7 guys, each with their 10 or whatever percent that needed to weigh in on it, and it slowed a lot of things down. And there's a lot of, to Paul's point, these aren't always necessarily the most savvy and experienced business people. Some of them are just amazing content creators that did a great job creating a brand and a community. But like, at what point does that stop, and then the business need to really take its own legs and have its own, its own C-suite kind of run the show? I would say about the 60 million, 420 plus valuation range is where you'd expect to see that happen.
Yeah, no offense to like Nadeshot directly, but let's like right. I don't know him, and I don't know how that business has been managed. I suspect that not all of these businesses are being sort of built as well as they could be. Jeremy does have a good comment here. I want to talk about this. 100 Thieves is the new FaZe. Can't say I always agree with where they invest their money, but in terms of how well they work with mainstream personalities and media, so I'm not really surprised by the numbers. I mean, does anyone else think that 100 Thieves and FaZe are basically interchangeable at this point? Like, there's not much differentiation between the brands fundamentally.
Seems like a similar strategy. Yeah.
Again, and I'm not discrediting it. Your joke about selling a lot of hoodies, which is accurate, I think. By them being interchangeable, you mean these are both esports orgs and tier 1 teams that are really centered around merch, right? And centered around lifestyle and branding. And that's fine. We see other ones that are more competitive that want to win, but then you need to win in order to get that prize pool. Because at the end of the day, and kind of consistent with our talk about Riot and League of Legends esports, right? All of these different companies are vehicles to push sponsorship, to push product, right? To accumulate views. And so when you look at 100 Thieves and FaZe, doing it through the branded lifestyle play versus some of the other orgs that are doing it more competitively focused, at the end of the day, all of them really need still to convert that audience. And that's something that we're seeing with moderate success here and there, but with really no clear front runner as to what's the proven model. So I think it's still early days as far as like what all these competing theses are trying to prove.
Guys, I want to move on. Unless you have any other thoughts on this, I want to move on to other things here, because there's a lot of news to get through this week. And the second story here that I thought would be interesting to bring up is UTA. Hang on, can you guys see this? Oh, sorry. UTA in the news, and the headline here is UTA launches $200 million SPAC for video game related acquisitions. So UTA, most well known as far as I knew as a talent agency, right? Confirmed that UTA Acquisition Corp has launched an offering of 20 million shares priced at $10. They'll trade on NASDAQ, and the focus will be on gaming assets to leverage their in-house gaming team. Now, according to this, the SPAC and UTA's partners in the SPAC is a separate investment entity from the talent agency, but they have like recruited some video game veterans from Google and other places, and also most importantly, Reginald Fils-Aimé, who was the president and chief operating officer of Nintendo of America. So this is the other article I saw where he's going to lead this blank check company focused on gaming and digital media. He was the headline here, but this is again the same UTA SPAC. I'm curious what you guys think of. One thing I've mentioned in previous podcasts and live streams, I think, is the talent agency market being a little bit crowded all of a sudden. I'm curious, Lindsay, what do you think of talent agencies getting in the business now of SPACs and acquiring gaming companies? And maybe to all of you with the $200 million SPAC, what are the potential targets here, right? Like, who do they go and acquire that would make sense within UTA, right? I assume there's going to be some synergy with UTA.
To be honest, I would actually love to hear Jimmy's take on the talent acquisition part and Jeff's take on the SPAC part, because I feel like that's totally up both our
Passing the
alleys.
buck.
I
Passing
know.
the buck.
Well,
All right.
no,
Hey, it's
because
cool. You could
this
just,
just
you know,
isn't.
put your
You know, I
camera
don't
off.
know. Well, I don't know that I know
We each
enough.
get
I
one
don't know that
pass
I
per
get it
episode,
enough.
so that's
Yeah.
one pass per show.
I don't know if I get it enough. Like, I would love to hear from you guys, because I just feel like that's the
Yeah.
that's the
Jeff,
world
who,
we're both
Jeff,
in.
who do they go
but
and
let's-
acquire?
Yeah.
Who do they go
I
and
mean,
acquire?
I want to know what Jimmy thinks. No, kidding.
Oh,
I think at least we're all paying attention for this one. That's an inside joke. I think they acquire a team, maybe, right? Like if they're a talent agency, kind of would make sense. Maybe they acquire a team.
Why get a guy like Reggie then, who was at Nintendo? This seems more like
I
buy
think
a
with
game
some of these
developer.
SPACs,
No?
it's like you just kind of get a brand, like a guy with a brand name. Like I don't necessarily think just because Reggie ran Nintendo means they're gonna have to buy a gaming like a game developer. He clearly understands enough about esports, running a business. Like he can help with raising capital, stuff like that. Like I don't think it necessarily means that's exactly what they're gonna go after. And actually, I don't know if you saw Paul, I put in the private chat. Actually, your friends over at Immortals, Ari Siegel just did a SPAC that I saw today. The announcement they raised $200 million. It's called Games and Esports Experience Acquisition Corp, which really
was the other.
my.
I was going to get to that
Sorry, well I blew that one, but I thought that was interesting that they specifically talked about esports experiences, just given kind of my day job.
Can I ask sort of the question here, which is, it felt like SPACs had their moment in the gaming industry, right?
Right.
And then sort of went away. And now, since you mentioned it, I'll bring it up here. Now we're seeing two here. Well, the second one was, so the first one was the UTA one, the $200 million one. Then this Games and Esports Experience Acquisition Corp, $175 million SPAC. Right now, are SPACs back? Right? Is the SPAC back in gaming? Is my question to you. And where are the targets? Right? Who do these companies go and acquire? Like the UTA one at least says specifically, it says, while the company may pursue an initial business combination target in any industry or sector, so it could be multiple businesses, it intends to identify and complete a business transaction with a company operating in the gaming, digital media, creator economy, entertainment, and technology industries. Like, kind of vague.
Yeah,
Super
that
vague.
could be anything.
So, and I was also looking at that first story, the UTA story, like that's a lot of money. What are they planning on buying? Is it, like, to Jeff's point, one big expensive property, or maybe they just want to snatch up a bunch of the competition? There are a lot of gaming agencies out there, almost, as we know from our interview with Evolved a few months ago, almost none of the other ones are licensed. So they're really more management companies, but they have a roster of talent that could be valuable to UTA. So I was thinking maybe they go out and snatch 5 or 6 of the smaller guys and kind of roll them up into their umbrella, because that's their bread and butter. And I wouldn't expect them to buy like some kind of tech company that doesn't service them, doesn't have talent. I definitely want to spend more time with this Immortal story.
I mean, should UTA be in the SPAC business, Jimmy?
I mean,
is that too loaded of a question?
How else are they gonna raise $200 million? By going to any of their numerous overly successful, talent, on their roster and raising it privately, perhaps, though that might not be entirely ethical.
Yeah, I will say the other one, the Games and Esports Experience Acquisition Corp, also didn't really specify what they're actually going to be doing with it. They also had a very vague, it says it intends to focus its search on target businesses and interactive media operating directly within or adjacent to competitive gaming and esports sectors, or in industries with similar user characteristics or demographics, including but not limited to e-commerce, media, content, and other IP, sports, entertainment, and social media. So basically everything.
But what was weird to me is that the last paragraph, and I didn't read the filing, so to be fair, coming with not full information. It says, as a next step, Geeks, which is the SPAC, also proclaimed its intention to merge with Gamers Club Holdings, a Brazilian gaming subscription platform owned by Immortals Gaming. So it's like they raised this money and then basically bought one of their own assets, which I don't know.
Which is a way of taking it public.
It's a way of taking it public. It's a way of taking it public. There's probably some advantages for some of the, the founders. Like they get the founder shares and stuff like that. It's an interesting vehicle. But I don't know that much about Gamers Club Holdings. Do you, Brazilian gaming subscription platform? Do you know much about it, having interviewed them? I didn't remember them talking about it too much.
I don't think they talked about it at all, to be honest.
It actually is interesting now to think back how they created this siloed management structure and kind of broke everything out. Makes sense. They were able to do stuff like this, selling off pieces. It actually kind of maybe is a reason why they did that.
It's an excellent point, actually. You could argue with some leverage, like maybe does a SPAC take out 100 Thieves, or do we see 100?
Certainly
Thieves?
Could. I mean, that's what happened with FaZe. So
that's what happened with FaZe. It would make sense. That was the other thing. Like the interesting part is you obviously these SPACs. It's not like big institutional investors for the most part that are listed, right? These offerings are done sort of behind closed doors. I'm always curious who's the money behind them, right? Like with the 100 Thieves deal, you could see who the VCs were, right? It was very clear. There was nothing there were no like marquee VCs. It's Dan Gilbert's probably like core circle. But I guess I'm always curious what's the backing behind this, because does that define sort of where these things, what they end up buying, or are they purely financial transactions, right? Like, is this trying to eke out maximum financial sort of arbitrage and leverage here, or is this about some kind of more strategic kind of acquisition?
Well, what's interesting to me is that I thought like one of the rules with SPACs was that they couldn't have a target lined up prior to like doing the SPAC, whereas here it very clearly seems as though this was just financial engineering to kind of buy their own assets. So
yeah,
I have no idea how all that works. And it is interesting too, because it kind of gets to your point that you just said, like when these people raise SPACs and they say, hey, we're going to look at these 8 industries, do they already sort of have a few targets in mind? I have to think like logically they probably do. But it is an interesting thing in this SPAC industry. There's just so many of these happening right now. And in gaming, there's not that many assets you can buy for 500 million to 2 billion. Like there just isn't that much out there.
The beauty of this news, it's another 375 million at least flowing into the gaming space, right? Like that's fundamentally, it's just more cash inflow into the gaming space. To me, it's all good. Let me just get caught up on a couple of these comments. LinkedIn user says, I think FaZe is not so much an esports anymore. They are more like a TV show there to sell merchandise and brand items. They're in many ways, in my opinion, the Disney of gaming. I mean, you could make the same argument for 100 Thieves, right? They all compete sort of at a token level. Jimmy, I don't know, you side at that.
Oh, I thought I was on mute. Sorry, I tend to roll my eyes when I see FaZe Clan, so that was unintentional.
You see it. Chris says, Tillman Fertitta trying to get out of his SPAC has me worried about the future of this investment vehicle. Chris, I'm curious why, other than, SPACs not being nearly as, trendy as they once were. I'm curious why you think this one may not have a good future. All right, guys, let's move on. We need to do, because it is part of our core DNA as a show. It's incredibly important. We absolutely need to do all the gaming chair news that comes out. It's our core competency. And so
I'm taking my pass on this one.
Oh my God.
The headline here is Lamborghini develops gaming chair with carbon fiber top plate clad in Alcantara. It gets verde accents, prominent Lamborghini logo embroidered on the backrest. And so this is a Lamborghini and Secret Lab collaboration. And it's another exciting, call it premium gaming chair. This is again another Secret Lab kind of exclusive. There you go. You can see it here with the green. accents and the Lamborghini logo. You guys, where does this rank in the pantheon of gaming chairs? Are we near the top? Are we near the bottom, Lindsay?
Oh, I like this so much.
Okay. Better than the tiny chair?
No, of course not better than the tiny chair. It's against my ethos. No, I don't know. I keep thinking like, oh, there's gonna be a luxury car brand that makes a chair that I hate. Then I think like, why not? I mean, it's not. I just don't see this as a negative in any way, other than they're not gonna make 50 million of these either. I guess I don't really see the downside to these types of things. Like they're fun, they're cool. Whatever. It's interesting. I like it. I don't know.
Here's what I fundamentally don't understand though. Like gaming chairs, the irony of gaming chairs is they're like sort of imitations of racing seats, right? Like for whatever reason, that's the direction gaming chairs went, like with these sort of very padded side walls and like things that are designed to keep you in your seat when you're racing and you have G-forces on, like being exerted on you. And I never understood that. But if you're going to do a gaming chair with a sports car company, right? Why not just take the chair directly out of the car and put wheels on it and sell that? Wouldn't that have been more interesting? Like an actual...
Oh, seems like you're pushing this gaming chair thing a little too far.
You're thinking too much about the gaming chair.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by the gaming chair market because I think it's the barometer for the gaming industry as a whole. I really do. The more innovation we see in gaming,
as the gaming chair market goes, the rest of the market goes.
Yes.
The bellwether of the industry.
It is.
What's higher than Lamborghini? Bugatti?
I want to know more about the carbon fiber top plate and like what that means and what that does.
What was that word that there was a word that I don't...
Alcantara.
Yeah, what is that?
It's a synthetic suede-like material.
Yeah, that's used a lot in cars.
It's supposed to be very environmentally sustainable and friendly, I thought too.
It just feels
very nice.
Interesting. It's very very.
The only
my hat actually is made out of Alcantara. I'm sure you couldn't tell.
Chris says, sorry, go ahead, Jimmy.
No, take the comments. Let's see what chat says.
Chris says esports orgs are just new seasons of MTV Real World. It's actually kind of true. Jeremy says Secret Lab's a great brand to collab with, but I feel that it's a bit wasted when Lambo's main audience that's willing to spend $500 on a chair would be more interested in investing in a racing sim rig. It's true, but they also still need a gaming chair, right? I just think the person who owns a Lamborghini can probably afford a massively more expensive chair. The audience for this, though, are not just people who own Lamborghinis, right?
It's people that think Lamborghinis are cool. Yeah, those chairs are awesome. Like,
Krishna says
you're probably the guy who wears the Ferrari hat too.
Thick boy.
Krishna knows that's an OG fan right there.
Krishna, you didn't hear, although you must be an OG fan of the Honorable Jimmy Barata. We have since renamed Jimmy to Jimmy the Judge Barata, or Honorable Judge Jimmy Barata. Either
I'll
one
allow
works.
I'll allow it.
But Thick Boy gets a pass if you're an OG here. All right, guys, let's talk about Steam Deck. Steam Deck in the news. The headline here: Valve's Steam Deck probably won't get exclusive games. And the subheadline says that doesn't make much sense to us, says the company. So they've basically confirmed that they're not going to get exclusives. Everything that runs on it will also run on a big PC. And there will be nothing sort of specifically developed for Steam Deck. And I'm curious how you guys feel about that. I think we all suspected this, but does knowing this alter anyone's sort of feelings about the potential success for the Steam Deck? I mean, Lindsay, you're a big fan of the Switch. Like, does not having exclusives for Steam Deck change your mind about Steam Deck? You're muted, Lindsay.
My mic keeps disconnecting and reconnecting and muting me. But anyways, this actually made it more appealing to me. I think Well, here's the thing. I think it made it more emotionally appealing. I don't know if that's going to translate to sales dollars, but their whole thing was this is an alternative to the PC. If you're going to make it an alternative to the PC, which has access to, entire library, massive amounts of games, I think it's smart to not make it exclusive. Like, why not? I mean, on a PC, you can have a variety of game launchers. So like, if you're going to truly make this an alternative and stick to your mission, then yeah, you shouldn't have exclusives just for the Steam Deck. So I think when it comes to how they're building the brand and the company, it's a good move. How that translates into sales, I'm not sure. Sometimes that goodwill is enough to actually power sales. Sometimes, obviously, if you don't have exclusive games, there's not necessarily an easy ploy to get people to buy this. So I guess it depends, but it did help me build trust in the product, which is it says something, but I don't know how that translates to dollars, I guess and that's why we have the profit on this show.
I'll say,
Yeah.
Paul, as soon as you started reading that story, my heart stopped for a second because I thought there was going to be some like delayed again. We're scrapping it, so for me, that was like my first thought. So I'm glad to hear that at least they're talking more. The more you manifest it, right, the more it becomes a reality. I have to say, and this is not because this is an OG follower of mine, Krishna, on our YouTube chat here, but his comment honestly is exactly where I side too. So I thought that was worth sharing.
The comment says, doesn't that make sense though? I want a Steam Deck knowing I can access my entire Steam library on the go. I mean, it's a great point, but why can't it be both, guys? Like, why can't you have your entire Steam library on the go? But again, the Steam Deck is made by Valve. Valve makes games, right? Like, why wouldn't they make one or two exclusives for Steam Deck only that doesn't hurt anything else that's on Steam? Because Valve can, right? The beauty of being Valve is you can make hardware and you can build games. Why would you not do both? Jeff, I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
I think you bring up a good point. I mean, I think every time we ever talk about new console launches, I feel like I'm the first one who always is pounding, like, you need something, you need a killer app, you need something that drives exclusivity. Now, I sort of do lean on the Jimmy and Krishna side, where it's like the killer app here in my mind is the accessibility. It's that you can play all the games you have on Steam, but on the go. And maybe that is just enough. The only way that I think it would make sense economically to build a full game and have it just exclusive to this is if it was a game that really was like tailored to being used on the go, or something about the Steam Deck where it was unique to that. Like, I don't think it would make sense for Valve to build a really great game and then say you could only play this on the Steam Deck. Like, I just think they'd be cutting off so much of the market. Like, why spend those development dollars to sell a piece of hardware that really is just about accessibility and increasing playtime? Like, I don't think they're trying to bring in new people with the Steam Deck. I think they're basically trying to engage their existing audience more for like a longer period of time to get a little bit more spending. Unless I'm just wrong completely about the strategy.
Value proposition if you're like, buy a Steam Deck and you'll get these like 2 or 3 mini games only for the Steam Deck made by Valve. Like,
on paper, that 100% makes sense. But I guess what I'm saying, if they were just going to do that, could they make those 2 or 3 small games good enough where it actually drove sales of the game? I doubt it. So I'm thinking like you would have to create like a Half-Life style game, like something that would cost hundreds of millions of dollars to develop. Actually, essentially what they did for VR, giving them some credit, even though it kind of didn't really work with Half-Life Alyx. They developed an exclusive game for VR to try to push VR headsets, and it kind of didn't really work, right? I remember that was a big topic on the podcast back during COVID. You guys were talking about that a lot and kind of how that was going to drive adoption of VR, and it really just kind of hasn't worked. So I don't know that it would make sense to sort of invest those resources to build an exclusive game for this.
Don't you also think that if the Steam Deck takes off and gets really popular, that Valve will start developing games that are better to play on it anyway, and they can be available in both places? But it's like, oh, you should really have a Steam Deck to play this game, even though it's also available on your PC.
But it's sort of a chicken and egg thing. Like, how does it get popular if it doesn't have the games? But I
know. I am just saying, like, I think that Valve is making the right move because I think a lot of gamers are going to like this, and that helps. I think that helps initially with their sales.
Guys, I want to talk about some of these comments here, and then I want to bring up a related story about Valve, which I don't know if it changes people's minds here, but Krishna says, doesn't that make sense? Oh yeah, I read that one. Krishna says, if you want to be a console, but I think it's really hard to be both. Yeah, I mean, that implies that having exclusives makes you a console, which I get that argument, but like I'm literally talking about, could they make 1 or 2 games to throw in, with at launch that you can't play anywhere else, but still have the entire Steam library playable on the Steam Deck? I feel like we may be getting a little bit religious around. Is it if we make any exclusive, it's a console, and therefore we can't ever do that? Like, the question is, does it make good business sense? And given Valve's capabilities, I don't know what else they're working on, right? Like, I haven't heard any other games they're making. Dota 2 is in a pretty good place. Like, so I don't know. Jeremy says, this might be a hot take, but I actually think the Steam Deck is going to have a rough time in terms of sales, since it will still be competing with the Switch just because of who it's targeting. Jeremy, that is a hot take. Let me ask you 3 guys, Jimmy, Jeff, Lindsay. Do any of you believe the Steam Deck is a direct competitor to the Switch? Like, that they, in economics terms, that they are direct substitutes?
I didn't originally think so. Because I always thought the Switch was, for little baby gamers, and the Steam Deck was for big daddy gamers like myself. That's me just kind of being a dick right now. But seriously, I thought the Nintendo was really more for like my goddaughter, right, who plays Animal Crossing, and the Steam Deck was going to be for us to, if I wanted to take Apex on the go. So I did kind of personally, mentally have that distinction, but I could be totally wrong there.
Lindsay, how do you see it? Do you see them being direct substitutes?
I don't see them being direct substitutes. I'm totally with Jimmy on this one. This is exactly how I thought of them. And I think I really do think that this is an entirely different audience.
Yeah, I tend to agree, which is why I think, first of all, I think the pre-order sales, just given how long, like, the backlog it seems like pre-order sales, I think, are probably quite strong. I haven't seen numbers. But I suspect, look, Jeremy, the smart money, the Vegas odds would probably be on you, just because of Valve's horrible track record with hardware. Like, they have literally every piece of hardware they've ever put out has failed pretty much. And so, like,
that's so true. I forgot about that.
Like, the track record's not good. But I don't know. This is novel, and it's a different audience, I think, and it'll be interesting to see how it sells. But you make a good point. Robert says Steam Deck has an interesting rating system to identify the graphic impact on gameplay experience, or if it just won't work. Exclusive titles may help drive sales, but ultimately they have a challenge meeting demand and don't need the boost. Yeah, I mean, it's a good point. I think, I can't remember what Gabe Newell says, but he said some very large percentage of games on Steam were all going to work flawlessly, basically, on the Steam Deck, right? So I think they're pretty confident that the hardware is going to be powerful enough. Krishna says, agreed. Additionally, Steam Deck will be underpowered as new games come out quickly. I mean, Krishna, that's sort of true of any piece of hardware, right? Like, even your PC at some point gets underpowered as new games come out. Jeremy says the Switch was really smart because it's great for family gaming and on the go, whereas I feel the Steam Deck is more targeting towards people who are away from home a lot. Yeah, I think also less like couch gaming for people who don't have consoles or don't want consoles.
Yeah.
Like, there's a whole market of PC gamers who I think would dabble in mobile if they had something legitimately good, right? And maybe that's how you define that Steam Deck niche. Christian says they're better off being a portable console with no access to the Steam library. I mean, I don't know if you guys agree with that, but the Steam library is a big part of their.
What would you play then?
Well, I guess Jeremy's Christian's implying like they make games for it, like it's just a console that every developer will make games for. Jeremy says people who don't have PCs already will be less likely to purchase, in my opinion. People who don't have PCs. Yeah, that I agree with, right? If you don't have a PC, chances are you're not using Steam. So yeah, I agree, you're less likely to purchase. Chris says with PC,
I almost disagree.
Why? Go ahead.
I just think that this is going to be for people who are already PC gamers and just want to play on the go.
Yeah,
so I think what he was saying was that it's going to be for people who don't play PC and just want to like.
No, he's saying if you don't have a PC, you're less likely to purchase. Which
then I 100% agree.
Chris says, with PC gamers only representing 20% of the gaming market, I think this product is too niche. This becomes the Dreamcast of PC. Great hardware, small audience. Guys, 20% of the gaming audience is a big share. This is not an insignificant number of gamers. What their
goal is too. This is not like their number one revenue driver. Have to make a zillion trillion dollars off of it either. They can make enough to meet demand and make a nice little profit and move on. Also, shout out to the Dreamcast. That's the gaming console I had when I was growing up, and it was awesome. That's the only one I had growing up, actually.
Jimmy, you're muted.
I had Dreamcast also, Lindsay. I love it. I just wanted to say selfishly, this is where I also have difficulty separating, analyzing this as a business decision versus us as consumers, right? Because I don't care if it services 0.1% of the market. I want to buy one of these. I want to play it exactly so I could have my Steam library on the go. So just kind of separating the two is kind of sometimes difficult.
Jeremy says, just thinking to a previous episode of the podcast, someone mentioned they were taking a vacation, considering bringing their Switch and play PGA. You have to imagine the Steam Deck will be similar. Jimmy, that was you, right?
Yeah, I talked about playing PGA and how much fun I had, but how I didn't care for it on my Switch unless I had plugged it into the console portion that plugged it in the TV and then used my Pro controller because that was more user error than anything. We had left the Switch in like the bottom of a desk drawer for well over a year because it's semi-useless, honestly. And and the joystick now is not great on it, so I just need to replace that hardware.
My Switch collects dust also. Jeremy says, agreed, Chris. Krishna says, consider longevity of consoles. They have a ceiling, but games are developed within confines of the hardware. This is true. So the consoles have a fixed lifespan and are usually sort of replaced before the games sort of how the games tax them surpasses the capabilities of the hardware. You're absolutely right.
Totally true. Yeah.
But I also don't think this is the last Steam Deck, if it's a success, that Valve's going to make, right? Like I'm sure there will be a Steam Deck Pro, a Steam Deck 2, right? If the device is a success, I wouldn't be surprised that they do have follow-ups with beefier hardware. And by the way, Christian, I never worry about hardware. Like hardware will always get smaller, faster, cheaper, more power efficient. Like it's just the nature of tech. Gary says this is definitely a second mobile gaming device.
Yeah.
Second gaming device in general, or like a second mobile game? In other words, people have their phones and this.
Argument for both. Honestly, an argument for both, right? Everyone has the phone, obviously, but even if you had a Switch or a PSP or I don't know something else, I don't know what they even have these days anymore. I have that Razer Kishi that you got me that I use on my mobile, and I want a Steam Deck, and I have a Switch, and I want a Steam Deck, but I'm probably in the minority there.
I think where Gary is totally right is it's a second gaming device for PC gamers.
Yes,
right? Like
absolutely.
I have no interest in mobile gaming hardware because I'm a PC guy through and through. I own consoles, but I rarely play them. This to Greg's question, will all of four of you want to get one? I'll answer. I did pre-order, like I put the $5 or $10 or whatever to pre-order. God knows, how long it's going to take to actually get one. But it's probably the one mobile gaming device that's interesting for me because, I have 273 games or whatever in my Steam library, right? Like, some huge library of games that this potentially takes advantage of. Maybe Jimmy, Jeff, Lindsay, we're curious the answer to Greg's question on this. Will you guys get one?
Yeah. Well, I think we all need one as part of our jobs, honestly. So we should
For market
probably
Steam
research,
should
yeah.
just sponsor us and send us some to see how they are.
Group order.
Group
Yeah.
order. Well, there you
Put
go,
on the
Greg. That
company
answers your question.
So glad you think we should get them, Greg. I agree.
Christian says, do you think this will be some type of every 2 to 3 year release of hardware?
That's a good question.
That's a good
I think it
question.
really determines on how successful this first launch is, because this could be easily a one and done, right? Even if it's successful, it could be a one and done, because what does Valve even do? I don't know.
Can we answer this question in the context of the article I wanted to put up here, which was another Valve article, which is Gabe Newell at an event he was speaking at, said, Valve's betting big on headsets and VR gaming. So basically, he was discussing his vision for the future of video games, and he was talking mostly about brain-computer interfaces. Obviously, talked about the Valve Index, Half-Life Alyx, and he concluded that AR and VR are not end goals in and of themselves. They're milestones towards a future, what he calls a pervasive brain-computer interface. He says, there are interesting questions like, are things sort of stable end goals or are they transition points? This I'm quoting Gabe here. My view, which is not in the accepted middle realm, is that VR and AR are transition points towards brain-computer interfaces, Newell said. Everything you have to do in terms of controls in games, in terms of understanding visual processing, in terms of competent design, are leading you towards brain-computer interfaces and what they do. He says, I think they're going to be incredibly disruptive, one of the most disruptive technology transitions we're going to go through. So I think it's super valuable. We're making big investments in new headsets and games for those application categories, but also looking further down the road and saying, what's that evolve into? Can I just put forward one thought here that that the Steam Deck is not about mobile gaming? That the Steam Deck is fundamentally about Valve educating themselves and refining their capabilities of building small, portable, energy-efficient hardware, because for them, AR and VR and eventually these brain-computer interfaces are the end goal. And so therefore, the Steam Deck's just like an exercise, right? Like, can we pack lots of power into something small? But it's an exercise towards something completely different.
I had the same thought as you were reading that article, not just to collect data, right, on entering the portable hardware space, but also for brand recognition and to kind of make that play as well from a marketing perspective as well. But no, I had the same thought as you.
So you're saying if we buy these, we're just participating in some creepy science experiment that's going to lead with some sort of weird computer chip? How does this all interact with the metaverse? So are we going to be, is the metaverse just inside your head? Like they just implant the chip and then you're in the metaverse?
Yes.
Is that where we are now?
But it meaning your brain is the interface with the metaverse and the computer or whatever the piece of tech is, that your thoughts are the inputs, right? That's in Gabe Newell's head, the endpoint. So it's not about AR, VR. Those are transitions. Fundamentally, it's we inject essentially information directly in your brain, and we get information directly out of your brain.
My brain is hurting just thinking about this. Let alone putting a chip in there.
Oh my god.
Make sure to tune in the Meta Business Podcast every single week.
This is where you get the hard-hitting thoughts like this one.
Yeah. Kevin says, Gary had said second gaming device in general that happens to be mobile. Yeah, that's Gary. That's what I assumed. Kevin says, do you think Steam has considered a game giveaway similar to how Epic Store has done to provide some baseline of Steam Deck games for consumers? Do you think that helped for non-PC gamers? Wow, really good question and really good thought. I mean, Lindsay, you're not like a hardcore PC gamer. If the Steam Deck came with free games that are from Steam, not like made specifically, but like if you knew that every week you were going to get one free game from Valve, right, on Steam that you could play on your Steam Deck. Does that change the math for you?
It definitely does. I don't know that I would be running out to buy one, but I can say it would become significantly more of a consideration. And I think that's a good way to bridge the gap between exclusives and offering the whole library without having to do either, but still making the Steam Deck more appealing. So I think that's just a good play in general. And I don't know, it's so hard for me to say because I don't know what it would take to get me to leave mobile games. But I mean, this is so crazy, but I actually occasionally go back to my Game Boy Advanced, which is wild, but I still have that and play that. And so I mean, I suppose it's just also because I'm a Nintendo diehard, but something like free games of stuff that I used to, or stuff that I'm interested in playing or used to play, that would help.
Jimmy, I don't know if you had thoughts on this.
I don't know if Steam needs to do a game give. I mean, I love the concept, right? And the comparison, I like the question. The Steam library is so massive. I think I would compare it more to the Apple library in terms of apps and games that Apple offers. That honestly, with just the right filters and the right presentation, maybe an overlay or something when you log in for the first time to show you what the top free games are already on Steam, that could be enough to attract users to download and play more. Because I guarantee you, when I get mine, that's going to be one of the first things I'm going to do is not just install the games that I've been wanting to play on it that I already own in my library, but looking, as Paul mentioned, what does he have in his library that's been there forever that might be free now already. That yeah, you don't need to tease me with like a temporarily discounted free game. I think the ones that they already have are gonna hook me already.
Kevin says also, hi everyone. Kevin, welcome. Chris says, okay, Paul, we get it. You want a Steam Deck? Cue up the YouGov piece about Tim the Tatman and Chipotle. Chris, I'm happy you mentioned that because this live stream is very generously supported, sponsored by YouGov. They're the absolute leading international research firm. They provide the best data on gamers, games, esports fans around the world. If you guys have watched this live stream before, we do a bunch of segments every few weeks around, which we call YouGov Insights, where we dive into sort of really, really interesting, actionable data points around gamers and the gaming audience. So if you guys are at all looking to do business in the gaming world, reach a gaming audience, talk to brands in the gaming world, talk to brands as a gaming brand, you definitely should be talking to YouGov because the data really will help you make better decisions, help you sell your product better, and we highly encourage it. They are tremendous supporters of the live stream. Go to yougov.com. I'll put the link in the chat, yougov.com/gaming-esports. There's a bunch of free reports there, a bunch of free data there. Something just to tease next week, guys, we will be doing, so definitely come back to the live stream next week, next Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to be doing part 3 of the YouGov research report on gaming influencers. There's really a lot of fun stuff in there. So do not miss that live stream. Tons and tons of good stuff from YouGov. Go check them out. And by the way, if you want to talk to them, if you need to get in touch with them, you can go to them directly through the website, but you can also talk to Jimmy, to me, to anyone, any of us really, can point you to someone at YouGov. We appreciate their support. So that's yougov.com/gaming-esports. Go check them out. All right. Jeremy says, I mean, I think without a doubt, Valve has the capability. It will all come down to how well it's executed from a business perspective. That is very true, Jeremy. And also, as with most things, Krishna says, do you think there will be optimized for Steam Deck game titles? I can't imagine the device being heavily dependent on Wi-Fi access to download large game downloads, etc. It's also a really good thought. If they haven't thought of that, they definitely should. I mean, Steam usually just says will run on, right? Like they'll tell you which VR headsets it'll work on, which, if it works on Mac, if it works on Linux. I don't know if they'll show something optimized for, but that is an interesting question. Krishna says, is there a streaming option? Don't know. I don't know if you guys know, but nothing I've heard.
Like
I don't know either. I'd be surprised though with the mobile hardware.
Not like Stadia, Jeff.
Stadia is back.
Stadia's back on
This
the
is the
Steam Deck.
future we were promised with Stadia.
Negative latency is here.
Negative latency is here. When someone asked me what I asked Santa for
The
Christmas, I
best
said
is
negative
yet to
latency.
come.
Jeremy says, Pokemon on the Game Boy goes down in the Hall of Fame as some of the best gaming of all time.
Okay, I would like to share a brief anecdote about this because
Lindsay, go ahead.
my Game Boy Advance got run over by a car fully. Like, it had tire marks on the back, and I still was able to play Pokemon. So the durability of that device is unreal. I don't think we'll get that again.
Theta says it's supposed to be VR capable, right? Steam Deck, I mean. I did hear that, Theta. So that will be interesting to see. But again, that's why I think this is like a practice round for them for sort of more advanced VR and AR kind of capability and devices. Sorry, guys, I want to do one last sort of tangential story on this, and this is not about Valve, but it's sort of in the same AR and VR vein here. And I think this is big news because it's Apple news, okay? And the headline here, first Apple mixed reality headset rumored to focus on gaming, media, and communication. And the article starts here and says, Apple's rumored AR and VR headset will focus on gaming, media consumption, and communication. They're saying, according to the analyst here, Ming-Chi Kuo, he says Apple is preparing to position the headset to be capable of replacing the iPhone in 10 years. So it'll be instead of your iPhone. It'll focus on 3 killer features: gaming, media consumption, and communication. And it says Apple will work with media partners to create content that can be watched in VR on the device. There'll be Animojis, VR FaceTime. That's going to be like the new Zoom. And supposedly it's going to be a dream for game developers, lightweight, tons of power, optical modules, eye tracking, Wi-Fi 6, a whole bunch of very fancy things built into this supposed headset that is going to come out, according to this article, fourth quarter of 2022. So literally a year away. Does Apple... Is this the moment AR and VR sort of like, we talk about the metaverse on Meta Business. Obviously, it's what everyone's talking about today, but fundamentally, hardware has held back VR, AR, gaming, right? This Apple throwing their hat in the VR and AR ring. Does this change everything to you guys? Like, could this be the moment that we see this inflection point around AR and VR tech? Jeff?
It could be. I mean, I'm surprised this didn't make bigger news. I don't know if it's just me. This kind of honestly slipped past my radar, which is shocking because it's Apple. Like, how do we not talk about Apple more as a potential metaverse, entry layer? Like, we all own iPhones, and you could argue that like this thing is the portal to the current internet / whatever you want to call the metaverse of today, in the social media platforms and apps. Why couldn't this be the device that we wear to enter the metaverse? Like, it feels to me, maybe that's just too obvious of a statement. Like, this could be massive if they do it right in the way that Apple has done hardware right. They clearly kind of made the smartphone popular. They did a great job with the Apple Watch, even though consumer sentiment on it has been mixed at times. Like, there's hundreds of millions of people that wear them. If they can do this right, they kind of have the business model with the App Store. They know what they're doing in terms of bringing in third-party developers. It really has the potential to be a massive story that I do think kind of went under the radar.
I mean, it's a mass adoption thing, right? Like, who other than Apple can bring these technologies, VR, AR, gaming, the intersection of all these things to the mainstream better than Apple? Is there any company out there? Like, right, Facebook has Oculus, or Meta, sorry, I should say, has Oculus. But, fundamentally, is there anyone better than Apple? Lindsay, I don't know if you have thoughts.
Well, no, I was just thinking because obviously Meta acquired Oculus as opposed to building it in-house, and Apple definitely has a distinct advantage for building hardware in-house. I suppose Google could acquire obviously they have the funds to acquire a company that also does hardware. I don't know that they would go the in-house route, although they've tried with in-house hardware before. It just hasn't been nearly as successful as Apple. So
I mean, Google
when it comes
Glass,
to hardware,
right?
it's just,
Google Glass. They had Google
I know.
Glass. They had Google, whatever it was called, card. It was the cardboard thing you stuck your phone into,
Yeah.
right, as a VR headset.
Yeah, that's what I mean. They've kind of tried in-house. It hasn't gone well. There very well could be a hardware company out there to acquire to make this happen for Google, but I mean, when it comes to creating your own hardware, I just think Apple is unparalleled.
It's the connection between hardware and software too that they do better than anyone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we had a long discussion around Valve. To me, that's the strength of Valve, right? The hardware and software sort of together, but really, Apple's on another level. Who here thinks this is the biggest gaming story next year? If this comes out, if this is anything close to what Jimmy, do you think it's the biggest story next year?
Not gaming story, but definitely metaverse and kind of, like you said, AR, VR story. And mostly just because Apple in the gaming world is kind of still that Apple Arcade, Crossy Road kind of, area that a lot of us will toy around with. Like, someone said this of me one time when I'm waiting for my lobby to queue up, I open up my phone and I play something on mobile during that like 2-minute whatever. And they're like, oh, great. He plays games when he's not playing games. And for me, that's what Apple is. It's like that filler game that I play. This could absolutely change all of that. But I still don't see Apple as like a huge gaming play. I do see it as a hardware play. I do see it as a software play, as a community, as a lifestyle kind of brand. People love wearing their Apple watches and products, and it was so cool. If you got one of those Apple t-shirts that they wear at the Genius bars back in the day, I don't know if that was cool with you guys and your friends. But I still don't see Apple as like this gaming giant, even though they have tons of apps and mobile games. It's just so different to me than like whenever I wanted to get a game, I had an Apple laptop, I couldn't play Steam on my Apple laptop, right? I couldn't play half of those games. So I just have this cultural, like, I don't know, wrench in my gut where I'm like, they're not really a gaming company. This does create the foundation for maybe multiple metaverses, actually. Maybe there's like an Apple, an Apple-driven community and digital world that you live in, which is separate from one that's, powered by Microsoft, which is separate and powered by, I don't know, something else. There's a lot of questions that come up when you see this kind of story. The obvious answers are ones that you guys already, tackled, which was, it's really cool. It's going to be great no matter what it is. And it's going to be that fundamental next step into mass adoption. Like that, those are absolute yeses for me, or points of agreement.
I have a question for you guys. I just want to get caught up on comments, but I have one last question on this topic. Theta says, makes sense given Valve has given up on PC VR at this point. Now they can just have a platform to run the games and not deal with headsets. It's true. Christian says it's like Google Daydream, but a standalone instead of phone reliant. Yeah, I mean that seems to be. I mean, Apple loves selling you more devices that, like, instead of replacing, right? Like they don't want you to replace your iPhone just yet. They want to sell you something in addition to your iPhone. So it's interesting that the analyst says this replaces the iPhone in 10 years. Kevin says, what does replace the iPhone even mean? I mean, Kevin, I'm going to take a crack at it and say it's fundamentally, if this headset can do everything your iPhone can do, right? Communication, media consumption, gaming, right? All the things it says that it can do. What else do you do on your phone, right? To me, those are
similar to how your iPhone replaced your iPod.
This is true. Theta says Facebook has shipped 10 million Quest 2s in about a year. We're already in the middle of the inflection point. We just need more compelling software. I don't think the hardware question, Theta, has been figured out yet because, like your average grandmother probably, won't go buy a Quest 2. Not to say that that's the only sort of metric to go by, but I don't know if we've hit the huge VR inflection point just yet. But the Quest 2, I agree, has been a huge success and as close as we've come. Greg says, unfortunately, better chance to get the delayed Steam Deck before Apple delivers. Do you guys agree with that? Do you think Apple doesn't deliver on this in 2022?
Was this a leaked story or was this an Apple announcement?
Came from Ming-Chi Kuo, who is notoriously accurate with his Apple leaks, right? He follows.
But still a leak. Still a leak.
Yeah.
Still a leak. I don't know. Do we think Apple doesn't deliver on Q4 2022 for this?
That seems pretty quick for a product they haven't even announced yet.
Exactly. They probably announce it by Q4. I could see that.
Since when do they announce? It's going to come at whatever event Apple does in Q4, and it's going to be the one more thing. You know, they'll announce the new MacBook Pro and the new Apple Watch 8, and then it'll be and one more thing. It's the classic like Steve Jobs. No,
it's true.
Theta says Apple also seems to be going for the affluent consumer route. The Quest 2 took off because it was the first powerful consumer-oriented headset, $300 for an all-in-one VR platform. I mean, Theta, you're spot on. The Quest 2 did make VR very affordable. You didn't need the things in the room to be mounted. That was another big thing. But I mean, we don't know what Apple's going to sell this for, and people seem to have no problem buying $1,000 iPhones. So it's like, if this thing was $1,000, I still think you would have a huge market for it, right? Like, literally, what's the market for $1,000 iPhones? It's massive. So, you know, people pay the Apple tax, whether you agree with it or not. Theta says it solved the economic bottleneck for VR. Yeah, I mean, Theta, that's a longer conversation. I'm not convinced there is an economic bottleneck for VR. I don't know if VR is held back because it's not cheap enough. I just think, again, it's not integrated in your life enough. It's not compelling enough. There's no killer app yet, right? There's a lot of reasons why it's not in every home, but I don't think it's cost. And like, I think Apple, if they make something truly compelling and charge $1,000 for it, would anyone here not like, I don't know, even people in the chat, right? Like, people would find a way to buy it or afford it.
I think we already can, right? Like, what you notice is, you know, Apple 1, Apple 3GS, Apple 4, we were upgrading every generation. And then the last couple of years, it's like, oh, it's cool, there's better cameras, but maybe I don't need to get the next gen iPhone because mine is still really solid. And so you're looking for that next thing. At least I am looking for that next thing to buy. And now I'm like, cool, Steam Deck, right? Or whatever else I want to get into. This might get us back on that train for the people that didn't adopt the Apple Watch or that haven't upgraded their phones every year and are kind of just waiting for something innovative.
Krishna makes a great point here. Also, Apple's ability to create their own silicon is what sets them apart. 100%, right? It's the vertical integration at Apple. Jeremy says, I think the main thing will be how well they can market to the gaming audience. Apple doesn't really have a big stake in the current AR VR gaming space, which is the current consumer. Yeah, I mean,
I don't know that I agree with that.
Yeah, Lindsay, I'm curious your thoughts on this. Like, do you think that because they don't have a big stake in the AR VR gaming space that they can't market to the gaming audience? Theta sort of also says similar thing. Apple has never been a gaming brand, so it's an uphill battle.
They've always been a devices brand, though. And Apple has been, I mean, they were the ones who came out with the iPad. And as Jimmy pointed out, they've been able to sell the watch and all this stuff. So first, I don't think Apple is aiming to sell to just gamers. I think they're aiming for a much wider market. I think they're aiming for their market, which gives them much wider flexibility. And secondly, I don't know that I'm totally sold on gamers being the only ones that are incorporating the AR, VR tech at the moment.
That's a good point.
I feel like it's, I actually feel like in some ways it's a lot more accessible to a lot of people because you don't necessarily have to be super good at like WASD or things like that to actually.
But it's a good point. Like, don't like discount. Think of the corporate buys for these headsets. If you can do like virtual Zoom. Like VR Zoom, right? Like, who are all gonna all the companies that buy a zillion MacBooks for their employees are all gonna buy these. Like, there's a market outside of gaming, I think is your point, right?
Yeah, and I think that particularly for headsets, I don't know that I know of people who are just gamers getting them. I like, this is completely anecdotal, but I guess it's just they have an accessibility factor that makes them appealing to a much wider audience for a variety of reasons. So I don't know that Apple necessarily has to market to the gaming audience, and I don't think that they're going to be trying to, because like we've all said, that they're a hardware company anyway.
Yeah. 2.8 trillion or whatever their market cap is, hardware. So if anyone has the resources, they do. Theta says you could be right, but we've already been down that route. First generation VR was $1,800. But again, early adopter, Apple tax. Like I definitely wouldn't be surprised if this was $1,000 plus. Jeremy says, I agree that we haven't really hit the big VR age yet, so Apple has the opportunity to blow the market wide open or miss their window. Not that Apple will suffer if their first model doesn't take off. Also very true, right? Mm-hmm. Like first gen Apple Watch, first gen, like there's stuff that takes longer at Apple to take off. I think the other good point you make there, Jeremy, is they have the opportunity because people underestimate the integration of the Apple ecosystem, how powerful that is, right? Like if I can put the thing on and talk to Siri and FaceTime my parents, or, there's nice, it has all my contacts. It has everything I watch. It has all my content. It has everything that knows about me from my iPhone, right? Which is a lot. You can see how that may play into their hand here. Kevin says, I find the societal normalcy aspect of wearing a VR headset around at all times to be significantly greater than Google Glass, which failed. I mean, do you guys think that's part of the problem? Would you guys, assuming, look, this is not what they're going to look like. This is just a concept render, but like, would you wear this around like 4 or 5 hours a day?
I mean, it actually looks pretty cool. The question is, how would it work so you could see out of it when you weren't doing the...
Sorry, VR. Jeff, to cut you off. According to the article, it does say you will be able to see through it. Like there's a VR mode and also an AR mode. So there's essentially a transparency that you can have.
I think to reframe the question too, like who makes a cooler product, Google or Apple? And that's been true. Abundantly clear in several different areas.
Theta says Google Glass and VR are not the same format. It's AR versus VR, which implies different experiences. True. I think the mention of Google Glass was more just around like wearing something all the time. Greg says, agree with Lindsay. This is not a gaming product like the Steam Deck. It's an Apple innovation. People will be lining up for it. I agree. I would be lining up for it. Nobody will wear VR headsets while they're out and about, whereas AR hardware is designed for that kind of wear. Theta, I think what Apple's going for is the best of both worlds, right? They're trying to make something that you would wear out and about and has AR capabilities, but also works for VR. Krishna says Apple is also more geared towards parents, in my opinion, since they try to integrate kid-friendly games as well as games for adults directly into the Apple TV. Agreed. Easily accessible, and you can use a variety of different controllers. Jeremy says, I was more thinking that gamers would be good to get the average person to buy it. Is there really a lot of current VR software accessible currently? Gamers being a vessel, not the primary consumer. I mean, there's VR software accessible on Oculus Store and on Steam, and right, the places that sell the headsets really is where you get software.
I think what Jeremy's really saying is like using gamers as early adopters to kind of get the tech into the mass market.
I think that's fair. I just think Apple doesn't need that necessarily, right?
I 100% agree.
Theta says the larger problem with Apple is that they need to come up with whatever the killer app for VR is. Who here thinks the killer app for VR in Apple's context is going to be something we don't expect? Like it won't be a crazy game. It'll be something like silly, like VR FaceTime.
It's going to be Beat Saber for sure. No, I do think like FaceTime would be a good one, but something like that. Yeah, probably something we haven't thought of.
Yeah. Theta says gaming is so far the most popular use of it, but even there people are trying to superimpose pancake games into VR format. We need to make a Nintendo-esque transition to experiences that are VR only. In a perfect world. I don't think anyone has figured that out yet. True. I was thinking people would just get a taste from someone who's purchased it for games just because the average person has little to no experience with VR currently. I mean, Apple has mainstream, VR Flappy Bird, VR Angry Birds. There you go. Some
Some bird game.
Some bird game. All right, guys, I have one last question on this, and Jeff, let me target it at you here. If this comes out Q4 2022, okay, where does this headset rank in terms of Apple's businesses from a revenue perspective? Like, is it bigger than Apple Watch? Is it bigger than iPad? Is it smaller than those two? Like, is it bigger than MacBook? You know, where does it rank in your mind in terms of size of the business for them? Should it come out on time?
It's a good. I mean, it's a tough thing to say just because
it's an analyst question. So I asked the ex-analyst.
Yeah, who never covered Apple, but just in terms of thinking like logically, we don't know what the price point is. Obviously, price point matters. It's going to be pretty expensive. So like, it might cost 5 iPads. So are we talking units? Are we talking dollars? Also, it'll be supply chain constrained. So like, you won't be able to sell probably to what the demand is. I know I'm kind of filibustering a little bit. I would say the TAM for this is massive, right? Like, it has the potential to be probably the second biggest product that Apple, like we read in the article, they are aiming for it to overtake the iPhone. The iPhone is clearly Apple's biggest product. So if that's their ambition, I think that it has the potential to be right up there. It won't be cute the first quarter, obviously. It'll be a novelty item, a Christmas gift for rich people and early adopters. But if it actually is cool and catches on, I mean, Apple sells like 50 million AirPods a year, and that number could be, I kind of pulled that out of nowhere, but it's something like that. It's ridiculous. I've seen some like tweets where I was talking about if you just took Apple's AirPod revenue, like it would be bigger than like Peloton and like all of these consumer hardware companies that are worth like $20 billion. Like AirPods would be significantly more revenue. So yeah, it's a massive market clearly.
I think that's a pretty hot take that it ends up being the number 2 business to iPhone. I think that's interesting. Theta says, I'm happy we derailed this into a VR conversation, made my night, guys. Theta, that's what we're here for. We're here to entertain. Theta says, speaking as someone who is neck deep in the world of VR, it's fantastic to hear a real conversation about it. I mean, it's you guys who make the conversation interesting. So like I said, always happy to derail and get off on topics that you guys want to talk about. That's the fun part of the live stream that you don't get on the main podcast or any of the other shows, really. You guys have control here. So that was fun, guys. I want to do one last really quick topic because I thought it was interesting, and then we'll wrap this up here. It'll be a short one. And let me just read Krishna's comment. He says, got to jump. Thanks, guys. Great convo and podcast. Be back next week. Krishna, thank you. Thank you for coming, and would love to have you next week. And lady, there you go. That's me. That's me. And this story was ValkyRae. And the headline here was ValkyRae reveals how long she has left in YouTube gaming contract. Supposedly she revealed key details in her agreement on stream. And in a tweet, she opened up to followers. It says about how many hours left she needs to stream to fulfill her contract obligations to YouTube gaming. She wrote, my 2-year YouTube contract ends on January 15th, and I still owe 198 hours before it's over. What do I stream? Who wants to play? What to grind? Anything. I'm desperate. Now, I'm curious what you guys look. It's an interesting little bit of insight, right? Like, I'm not saying this is groundbreaking. It's not groundbreaking news, but it's an interesting little bit of insight. 2 questions. Is ValkyRae, is the implication here that she's looking forward to the end of her contract? Right. And 2, is there this undertone of like feeling a prisoner to this contract? Like, I have 198 hours left to go. And I'm sorry, because my view clearly here is I don't want it to bias you guys, but Lindsay, I'm curious to start with you on this.
Can you imagine being in a job and being like, 16 more hours until I get paid? What can I do to fill my time taking ideas until I'm out of this prison? Like, I just, this is okay. So YouTube keeps paying all these creators ungodly amounts to switch from Twitch, and then all the creators wind up basically switching back to Twitch as soon as their contract is up.
Yeah.
And now they're also making fun of it on Twitter. And it's just like, wow, like this makes YouTube look not great. And this is not a great move as a professional, I feel.
By the way, to your point, Lindsay, Ludwig, who moved to YouTube Gaming, did you guys see he got banned in his first week at YouTube Gaming?
I saw that.
But it was like a DMCA violation.
Yeah, it was a DMCA
to be
violation.
Fair, like,
that's part of it, right? That's part of the switch, like where he wouldn't have gotten banned on Twitch. That's like part of the consideration in taking the money and having that freedom and being able to do what you want to do as a creator.
Well, it's also part of accepting money to do something. Like you should follow their rules too if you're going to take the money.
True.
Jimmy, is this a cry for help?
It's not just a cry for help. It's also, like you said, it's a hint that she's going to not renew, and that she's. When have we heard a content creator that like didn't know what to play or what to stream? There's like so many games out there. Play whatever you want, whatever interests you. They're gonna watch it. You know, Ninja stopped playing Fortnite to play Final Fantasy, even though he was getting 1/10 the viewers that he was getting with Fortnite at his height. And then you see like guys like XQC, right, that are now doing racing sims just because they want to try something different. And then when they want to unwind, they all go into GTA. So like when she says, "What do I play? What do I do?" I love Lindsay's comment because it was just so spot on. It's like, this is not a person that's excited to be there. She's winding out the clock, and I don't think she doesn't know what to play. That's the strange thing to me, right? She doesn't not know what to play. Is this just an excuse to?
I had two thoughts here. I mean,
Jeff, sorry, I just want to put one thing on you before you go into your two thoughts, which is, do you? I want you, if you can. I'm curious if there's a counterpoint to Jimmy and Lindsay here. Like, is this just a negotiating tactic, or do you have two other thoughts here?
Well, so my thought was it kind of plays into that. My thought was now I forgot my thought.
I gotta stop doing that. I'm sorry.
What was my thought? I think this speaks more. I don't think this is a YouTube gaming versus Twitch thing. This speaks to me as like being a streamer is sort of a hard job. Like these people get burned out, and they do. And I'm not. Let's be honest, I don't feel that bad for them. They're making literally millions and millions of dollars, but it is a hard, laborious job. Like it can be monotonous. I don't think that this screams to me like, oh, YouTube gaming is the problem. This is someone who probably decided, if this is the case, they decided maybe they don't want to sit for 7-8 hours a day and play video games on camera. Maybe she wants to try to be in movies. Maybe she wants to start a fashion line. Maybe she wants to, like do whatever, someone who's made a ton of money and had a lot of success and, lives in LA wants to do. So I don't know that it seems like you guys were maybe taking this in the direction of like, oh, well, she's just fed up with YouTube gaming and like she's going to go back to Twitch and it's going to be fine. If we take her at face value, I think that it's more, this is someone who's frustrated being a streamer and doesn't want to be a content creator anymore. Having said that, my second thought was going to be that this could just be kind of a PR engagement with her fans kind of thing of like, hey, come with me, get into my struggle. Like, I don't know what to play. Like, tell me what to play, but YouTube's the bad guy. Kind of like make it like a fun thing for her and her fans to create sort of this enemy. And it does help her a little bit, maybe with negotiations. So I don't know which one of those two theories I necessarily believe. It could be posturing and just like a PR play, but it really could just be, this woman is frustrated with what she's doing for a living and is like not that interested in being a streamer anymore. I don't know.
It's both good points. Antonio says she has a lot going. I don't think she needs YouTube gaming. She should stay away from consumer products for a while. I mean, that could play into it, right? But also Jimmy, is there legal, like, I'm sure the contract she signed with YouTube Gaming has some kind of clause that says she can't disclose some of these things. Now, the way she disclosed it may give her some, guess she didn't say how many hours in total she has to stream. Or...
Well, that's what I was thinking, because a couple of you guys had mentioned the bargaining power that she might gain, in the renegotiation phase. And to me, I'm looking at this like, I don't want to do a deal with this girl. She's going to disclose confidential material elements to an agreement that we paid her on. And she's going to publicly voice when she's unhappy with us, and can, you know, we're paying for her following, right? We're paying for her brand to be an affiliate marketer of our brand. So when I read that, I was like, I don't think that gives her power. I think that makes her less desirable personally. But again, you know, I mean, it's different companies.
That's fair. And even more than that, it's like, if you're one of her fans, like, how are you thinking about this? Like, short of like, oh, this is a cry for help, and like, okay, we support that. But like, if she's just like bored of being a streamer, like, I don't know, like, do I really want to go watch her and be like, oh, I have to like sit here for 7 hours, like my $8 million contract's almost up, like I don't even know what to do, guys, like help me, like what are these funny little video games I play today, like you losers watching me on screen, like it's like, I don't know, like that doesn't, if I were one of her fans, I'd be like offended that she's like, that's the way she's describing like what is our, you know, our passion kind of thing.
It's such a good point. Because if it was like a football player, we would be laughing at it for sure, right? It was like Tom Brady going, "Oh, I got to go to practice again." Like,
you'd be like,
3 more practices till the Super Bowl. Like,
this just feels really unprofessional. I mean, you can't, if you're going to become a content creator and that's your brand, you can't just espouse your personal thoughts all the time. Like, I don't know, start a really private Twitter account with like 10 people on it, and then you can say whatever you want. But when you're in the public eye, you gotta, because you would never get away with this at another job. You couldn't do this at any other job. Right. So I don't like this.
But which is why it struck me as cry for help, right? This is someone who's probably not in a good spot. Was my interpretation, because why else would you put something like that out there? Seems odd. Jeremy says she has gotten a taste of doing things other than gaming. She's a part owner of 100 Thieves now, and she's been in music videos, even attempted to start her own brand. Streaming full-time isn't for everyone. I mean, it could just be that she made so much money on this latest fundraising for 100 Thieves, right? Maybe they bought out some of her stake in a secondary or something like that, right? Like, who knows? She could be walking away with millions more dollars there.
Yeah, I would just counter, Jeremy. I love the point. I would just counter by saying the only reason she has a brand is from streaming, and the only reason she's a part owner of 100 Thieves, which is a streaming content creation based org, is because she's a content creator and a gamer. And so, like, what you're saying is like she's getting a big head, right? She's been in music and in videos and has this fitness brand, and so she's getting a big head. Is kind of how I read that. Like, that doesn't mean that you can turn against your core following and the people. I would argue that the core base of people that are her fans are there for the content and there for the streaming, and not for the music and the other things that are a little bit more recent. But I love the insight, honestly, because that's a good point as to like where these careers develop and what they choose to do later, and that they're not pigeonholed into one thing. That is a good point.
So I think Theta, I mean, we'll get to it, but you should read Theta's point. I think it's a good one.
Jeremy says content creator has many sides. It's actually worse than a football player, esports player, because she ultimately has creative freedom over her content, whereas you are locked into your respective sport and competition. True. I mean, she could technically turn her camera on and do like a chair stream, like a sleeping stream, right? and get her hours.
That's so funny. She should do that.
Theta says average people treat anyone who is even borderline famous like they aren't real humans, like mannequins who need to dance on command and be happy about it. I mean, Theta, that's how I see myself. I'm just kidding. Theta says, not saying she's entirely in the right, but fans have no idea what kind of pressure is involved with being on camera / microscope all the time. It's a great point. And I think we mentioned that she's been through a lot with the whole Reflect, sort of all that stuff that went down there with her face skincare brand.
I mean, this is an important thing to say. We definitely saw this in sports a lot, like during the Olympics, with the gymnasts, and even mental health with going back to Michael Phelps and some football. Like, this is a big issue in traditional sports. Like, these are real people and they do have mental health issues. So my problem is not necessarily, like, I think Theta brings up a great point. I wasn't trying to make light of her feeling this way. It's more the way that she is portraying it. Fans are going to take it as that she doesn't care about them. Like, if she came out and basically said, like, hey, I know you guys are important to me, but I'm struggling. I'm not enjoying this. I don't like this. It's not about the money. I just need for my mental health to step away. I think clearly there'd probably still be backlash from corners of the internet because that's just what people do. But I think most reasonable people would be like, that makes perfect sense. But to kind of talk down on to me, this message felt like she was talking down to the people that watch her.
I think as we're getting through this, I love that, Jeff, because I think as we're getting through this conversation, as we're reading through these points, we're bending the meaning, or we're bending the circumstances to make it more acceptable. Because on its face, it's still kind of outrageous. Like that, it doesn't undermine or overlook the legitimate points that Jeff brought up or that you guys have talked about. That's not what this is.
Yeah. Antonio says she deserves to have a big head. It's the equivalent to a rapper becoming an actor. She can agree. She's been very successful. No one, I don't think anyone's questioning that. They just says, I have 3K subscribers and I'm known in my little VR world. And even I've had to deal with all kinds of stupid, toxic behavior. I mean, Theta, first of all, I'm sorry to hear that. And I mean, your point is a very good one. I don't think any of us are disagreeing. I think it's how it was presented makes it, less likely that people take the time to have this discussion and see it that way, right? Like the problem is just that one tweet at face value doesn't help her cause if that's the reality here. Theta says, I can only imagine what it's like with millions of fans. That's a fair point, but at the end of the day, you can't care about that many people. We aren't geared for it. The demand for constant love is part of the problem. True. And she may be considering a career change as a consequence. I'm not sure what's happens after January 15th and her YouTube contract, but it'll be interesting to see. They just says it's not a coincidence that so many streamers have to take mental health breaks. Yeah, I'm biased because I'm coming from the creator perspective, I guess.
Well, I mean, I made a whole podcast about this because I'm extremely reactionary to that perspective and very empathetic when it comes to that kind of pressure. And even this totally rubbed me the wrong way, I guess is the point. Like, as someone who regularly thinks about toxicity and difficulties with audiences and all of that, like truly, I think about that all the time. And even this, I was just like, this is just, and that's why I started with the professionalism point, because for me, self-expression is important, but you have to maintain a certain level of obligation when this is your job. And if she had come at this from a mental health standpoint, from an I need a break standpoint, from anything like that, it's like, yeah, okay. But it was more like, LMAO, gonna have 198 hours. What do I do? It did not resonate in that way at all. And the thing that I would be really pissed about from a creative perspective too, from a content creation perspective, is if I'm YouTube looking at this and seeing this as a joke, I'm not offering contracts to other streamers in the same way. And I genuinely feel like that hurts other content creators. And I don't think that that's a good foot to put forward for the entire content creation community. And this is such a blip in the radar. Like we're spending a lot of time on it. This is one tweet. It's not going to be that huge of a deal at the end of the day. But like I said, as someone who thinks about this a lot, this just did not hit well. And I'm sure she's a lovely person who's a lot of stuff to deal with, and it doesn't take away from that. I'm sure I've said things that don't hit well. It happens. But I just wanted to put that out there that I don't think this is a good look for the creator community at all either.
Lindsay, what episode were you referring to where you discussed this?
So we have a couple that are coming out in particular, but I chatted with some of the women from Dignitas about this quite a bit. And they had some really interesting things to say. There's a former Call of Duty, she's actually a professional player, and she talked about why she didn't get into streaming, which I also thought was interesting. But yeah, so that's dropping in 2 weeks, I believe.
Yeah, so that's exactly, I wanted the little sneak peek, so you guys can subscribe to Meta Woman Podcast, the Meta Woman Podcast, and we've got, like I said, Lindsay's got some great episodes coming up with really great guests. So definitely stay tuned for that. First episode's up already. And they will come out every week, just like Business of Esports. So definitely have that to look forward to. Jeremy says, 100% agree, Lindsay. She has a responsibility to her community and fellow creators. I think that's a good point, guys. Guys, we are, we've gone a bit longer than usual today. Some great discussion, and I thank all of you guys in the chat who participated. You guys were amazing. We love doing this because of you. And we love to get this time to have these discussions with you guys. I think always great stuff comes out of it. Jimmy Jeff, Lindsay, thank you guys as always. Just a few reminders, guys. Make sure to follow us everywhere. Business of Esports on Twitter, on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, on LinkedIn, wherever you get your content. We're there. It's all Biz Esports or Business of Esports. And definitely make sure to subscribe. Go and subscribe on, doesn't cost anything, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google Play or any of those podcast platforms. Go subscribe to Meta Business and Meta Woman, because both of those shows have episodes coming out every single week. And it's bigger conversations. It's more metaverse, not just gaming specific, but they're a lot of fun, hopefully. And we welcome everyone's feedback. As always, thank you, all of you guys. Make sure to tune in next week. We've got the great YouGov Insights segment next week. Some data you absolutely don't want to miss. And we will see you guys all next week.